Okay, great. Then we'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock, 7:01. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So welcome. Let me begin by welcoming Donna LaRue, who is joining our board as an alternate. Welcome, Donna. Thank you. It's nice to have you here. Okay, I guess we'll start with our old business. So January's action items. I'm going to look back at the minutes that Molly sent out and go through the action items. There were a lot of them. I was pleased to see my initials were only on 3, so I looked. Oh, good. Okay, we'll start with Yvette. I was going to look at the elevator invoice and follow up on. I don't think it's the 3 cents on the reported amount. It says
it was 3 cent. There was a 3 cent question last month
For miscellaneous?
Yeah.
no, it wasn't.
There was a 3 cent and then there's a $31. They were two of them together.
Well, this is the elevator invoice. Oh, they're 2 different things. I'm sorry. You're going to look at the elevator invoice.
Which elevator? Because we have several, and I've looked at several of them, but is this the doors?
I think there was one that was a bigger charge than we had anticipated. And the question,
Topics?
Mhm.
So which,
Janet, do you have that right there?
It's, okay, so we voted on the 10,970 and we ended up paying 11,470.
okay, that, I'll double check, because that might be, we had another, call for them to do the alarm testing for the elevator, which was under $500, but almost $500.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go back and double check and track that.
Okay.
I found that.
Okay.
I'll make sure.
And then the follow-up on the 3 cent reported amount.
What is that?
I don't know what that is.
In the miscellaneous.
Was it miscellaneous?
It was 1 month was 3 cents, and the next month was like
That's this month.
$30. And now this month it's showing the negative $30. We still don't know what that is. Or where, like the 3 cents was the first item.
Yeah,
and the
this
next
month is 3170 something.
Yeah, I know what that one is. What month is 3 cents in?
3 cents was
Must have
like
been
3 months
December.
ago.
Oh, before December.
Yeah, that first month the line showed up with 3 cents in it.
I think it's just a matter of like, that's odd. Why would that be there, right?
Right.
That seems strange.
What month it is, so I can look.
Yeah. I guess people are looking back through their general ledgers. No? You're not? Okay. Okay, Erin is. So I knew somebody was. So.
$0.03 was on the general ledger that went from 12/1 to 12/31/04. I think it was because last month we looked at 2 sets of general ledgers. So the first
Oh,
one
you're
had
right.
3 cents on it. The next one had the 31.76 on it.
Okay, great. Molly was going to send the January draft minutes to Paul Calabria and CC'd Yvette and I. So she did that. And that was because we were, anytime we close a PO or move money from one line to another, the town finance director wants to see our minutes that we voted to make those changes. And Molly will send the library director goals to Yvette.
Yes. Done.
Yvette will send the RFP for HVAC work to town. Okay. Janet will move specials and fine money as voted above.
Done.
Janet was going to reach out to other town libraries regarding their use of a lawyer.
I did, which was unfruitful. I contacted my friend from Milford as well as the NHLTA, as well as the NHMA. NHMA is the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and NHLTA is the New Hampshire Library Trustee Association, who were present at the regional meeting that I went to. And my friend didn't remember who the specific woman who talked about the lawyer. She couldn't remember who she brought up or what the firm was. And then NHLTA said any instances that might require a lawyer, that the selectmen, the town council, decides if you can use the town's attorney. And then essentially exactly the same thing that NHMA said. So I was rather surprised and I also looked at the NHLTA's regional minutes, and they didn't have them up yet.
Mhm.
So for that meeting. So
Okay.
that's where we are. So
Okay.
I'm like,
Wow.
I was,
Bedford, and it was the same, they used the selectmen town attorney.
Yeah,
So-
our question was, what if our issue was an issue of concern with the town? Then what do we do? So that was why we were just investigating what other options there were
Can I
available.
make a suggestion?
Mhm.
I might have an attorney for you all. So Eric Stern was the library director at Derry. I think he was also the director before that at Nottingham. But he left Derry to go work at the law library in Concord, and then just left the law library. And I just got a letter from him maybe 2 weeks ago saying, I'm putting my shingle back up. He's an attorney.
Okay.
So his first career was as an attorney, his second career was as a librarian, and now he wants to mush the two together and see, because he's been a director, and he knows what goes on in library land. He's trying to see is there a need? He thinks there's a need. This might be someone we could reach out to who would be independent,
right,
but knows libraries.
right,
And he knows the law,
exactly.
in libraries. So
So what's his name? Eric
Stern.
Stern.
Maybe you could send Janet
Yeah.
his contact
Sure.
information, since you were
Yeah.
already talking
Sure.
about this. And
Donna, just to give you a little bit of a background, back in October, I went to a regional, it was just a regional trustee, director, friends, anybody associated with the library, and it was in Milford. So I was like, oh, this is close, I'll go. And one of the topics was libraries having their own independent lawyer. And there were 30 women there. And we were like, that's something to think about. And we had our retreat, and I brought it up because it just seemed like an interesting conversation in this meeting. And now I can't get any information past that. So I'm like, you guys brought it up.
Yeah. I think because I would assume that it would be good to have somebody like that who has the expertise, because then even if, we could use the town's lawyer if it was an issue not related to the town, you're starting from scratch if a person doesn't understand the laws pertaining to libraries and doesn't understand the background and that sort of thing. So to have somebody who has that knowledge would be really beneficial. So, okay, great. Thank you, Yvette.
Mhm.
I'm to document the chair knowledge for succession planning, which I have started. And I can share that with the group before their next meeting. Yvette was going to post the bookkeeper role.
Yeah.
Okay. Yvette to add air purifier to maintenance list.
Yeah.
And outreach to Kylie for team position. She's on board. And then I was going to reach out to Donna regarding interest in the board as an alternate. And here she is. So, okay, great. Lots of things, but we got them done. Was there anything I forgot or missed on there? Okay. All right. SMP is a placeholder on here. It's an architectural firm. We worked with them on some land site studies for possible future libraries. We just keep it on there so it doesn't completely fall off our radar. The next is strategic plan. Did anybody have any comments on the strategic plan that Yvette sent?
I did.
Okay.
I have 2 comments. One was the long form of the strategic plan. There's an awesome picture in there that was taken on Reggie's birthday when they were all dressed up like Reggie.
Yeah.
I love the picture. I just don't think that's the place for it. It was next to like something about programming, and I think we probably could put a more professional or program-oriented picture there. Then
She probably had no idea because she must
probably just pulled a picture. She thought it was really cool. There were
She probably
child
pulled it
librarians
from
in it.
Facebook because
Right.
that
So,
has nothing to do with
so
it.
that would be the picture that I would
Mm-hmm.
swap out. It is really funny, but that's not really the place for it in the strategic plan.
Yeah, I see that.
And then my only comment about the flyer version is I'm not sure what the use of the flyer version is going to be.
I wouldn't call it a flyer. It's an executive summary.
Okay.
So
Because it is a lot of work.
it's like, this is your short
Mm-hmm.
version to
Okay.
refer to if you're talking. This gives you a lot of bullet points.
Okay.
So
Yes. I didn't know if it was like something we were going to post, but like if someone handed it to me, I probably would not read it because it's a lot of words.
it's less words than this one though.
It's
I mean,
less
that's
words
kind of
than
the
that
point.
one.
I mean, I think we can post both, but this is going to be the short, like, no, this is the,
Right.
long.
But
didn't
as an
read.
executive summary, I think that is fine.
Yeah.
I guess I also had the same problem or similar problem with that flyer. Like, I liked the 4 main titled bullets, but I didn't see the need to have essentially any of the bullets because it's really small and it's really wordy. And that's just my take. But and I guess on top of what Aaron was asking, if it were something that was going to be just like just posted someplace, again, it's a lot of words, and that's all. And then my other comment with the strategic plan, there's no dates. There's no goals. There's no, it just felt like, I mean, there's goals, but it just felt like it was more, how do I want to say this? Like, hope you can get there. Like, there's no end date. There's no, I don't know.
So I can also speak to that.
Okay.
So the next step is for me to sit with department heads,
Oh, okay.
and kind of say, great, let's prioritize these, let's put a timeline on this, look at action items,
Yes.
make sure they're actionable,
Great.
and then bring that to you and say, here's how we're interpreting the plan so we can put it into practice.
Mhm.
So that is the missing piece. I mean, she went and gathered all the
Great.
information,
No.
but now it's,
Mm-hmm.
really for the department heads to make it actionable.
Great. I
So-
just remembered the other one, and there were definite, like, do this or get this.
Sure,
and
but
you could be like,
that was after we gathered the information.
got it.
you
Okay.
know, So yeah.
All right, while we're saying stuff, and I'll just speak up and say on the flyer, that font has to go. That font is not accessible for people. We need a font like an Arial, something like that is very difficult to read. And it's very difficult to, it's just very difficult to read. And we have a ton of fonts because we have the Open Your World one, then we have strategic plannings in a font, and then the other print is in another font, and some of it is bold. And so like, it's too much. And not in addition to be overwhelming, it is hard to read in the light color against the green background. And so I'm just speaking up while we're pointing out those
Sure,
things,
no,
that the
yeah.
font is like, I'm having a hard time reading it and I know what I'm reading. So for someone to just glance at it and pick up the information, I think could be a challenge. I think we want it to be like all one color, all like a streamlined font, because we've got a lot going on here.
Sure.
So, right. Anything else? I don't think it's no problems with the content. It's problems with that's it. Those
But
things.
this is like sample.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, and I just think it's really white with a dark background if you want, or white. I'm sorry, white with like regular font. If you want to do one color, but there's bold, 3 different kinds of font, and that the way the L goes into everything, it's just very hard to. For those of us whose eyes are not all they should be, it's hard to like get it
Almost
all.
like we should, and I don't know, the font of the Merrimack Public Library logo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Exactly.
what that is. If that's like Arial, it kind of looks aerial, but like carry it through. And you know, you can make things bolder or different sizes, but one single font.
One of my notes was
We just redid all of our fonts at work and have a new style guide, and it's very like Arial. That's all you get.
Yeah, because you don't want any, none of this, it also has to be sans, yes. So we want to be as clear and accessible as for people as we can be, so. All right. I'm sure if anybody has anything else that comes to them, we can let Yvette know.
I would just add one more thing,
Okay.
which is not a thing that we definitely have to do, but I know there was a couple of comments so far about wordiness. And I think depending on, you know, the executive summary placement and where that's going to land or live, I mean, it could be really like 4 boxes of those 4 areas instead of all of the detail under each title is just something to consider. But I mean,
It's usually in the front.
I think it
You know,
depends.
it's like you
Yeah.
open it up, there's the you know, table of contents. Right
And
there.
all the detail of the goals are there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to new business, we have the fiscal year 2024-25 budget, general ledger, invoices, open POs, and spending report.
I sent a whole list to Yvette on different things. I was curious about that 3175 for miscellaneous. There was,
Well, do you want to just go through them and then give Yvette a chance to follow up on that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I would love to know what the expectation is for turning stuff around. I don't turn stuff around on a dime. You know, I mean, you said in your email that you sent yesterday at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I want to see this now, you know, at the meeting. So
but all of this information is something that you have access to.
I do, but I also no trespass someone today, and that was most of my day. So, you know, other things happen. We have the normal business happens. We want to address your concerns as quickly as possible, but this was extenuating circumstances. I have some,
Okay,
maybe not all.
okay.
I can go back to the library. So what I have, and I don't know if people want to, I don't know if I printed out copies or, no, I didn't. Maybe I didn't. Okay. So first question was on the general ledger, which is today, this month's. What is the miscellaneous amount in 158460? I suddenly feel like I'm reading off a Jeopardy question. So this was a late charge. It was a late charge for Reggie's business card, and he categorized it under this. So that's just something I need to follow up with him to make sure he's not either randomly categorizing. I don't want to throw him under the bus. I don't mean it that way, but just to make sure he's doing the paperwork that is appropriate and tagging it, because when he tags it, then, you know, I'll do a quick approval, but it's a quick approval. So I just need to go back. And I've done that with other people when they go, oh, this is this line. And it's like, that's so not the, that's not the budget line at all. So it's just people who aren't familiar with the ledger just need to know what the bright line is. So that's what that was. Why were invoices submitted to the town for education and training when it wasn't funded? We've spent 180 in January for our unsupported line, 15,832. So this one was, the 180 was from Jenny's business card, where she had also tagged this line, and I grabbed all the other ones for the staff and not hers. It kind of depends on timing, if I'm approving invoices or if Jen is approving invoices. Again, I don't want to throw her under the bus because I don't remember who approved it, but I think also that question connects with the dues. The third question, why are dues paying out of trustee money when we have appropriated money budgeted? We've paid 380 January out of special when there's still 860 in the budget line. That's my mistake because I didn't pull that one. I just assumed, probably working too quickly, that education and training and dues are all coming from trustees, and we had nothing in the budget. But, you know, now we know, and we'll just, either we can make some kind of correction if you want. Certainly moving forward, I don't know that there's gonna be any other dues, because those were all the NHLA dues that we do in January for the staff. I don't think everyone has renewed yet, and I have to go back and check which staff are planning to renew. But that's that. Do you have question 4, do you have a plan for the advertising and office equipment money that hasn't been spent? It's still at 100% budgeted. What plans do you have for office supplies and maintenance supplies? These also have a significant amount of money remaining in the budget given over half the year has passed. So for advertising and office equipment, we have 500. That's probably going to go to the outreach swag that the youth services will buy. I don't want to make a decision on that until the department head can, but that's an easy buying outreach stuff. Or summer readings. I mean, that's really an easy one. So that's definitely going to go to that, and it will be spent by the end of the year. 64% of the office equipment budget has been spent. I can have Jared actually price the air purifiers for that, because when I went into the ledger, and I'll just say Jen was kind enough to throw all these numbers together for me while I was dealing with this other issue. So I went back over her notes and put my ideas in on this. But I think, you know, for office equipment, I looked in the ledger, and those kind of things are expenditures that come up, you know. So it has been replacing computers. It has been the Aqualite off the air purifiers. So, you know, given that we were looking at replacing some of them, I can go back and now we have money, so that's fantastic. Okay, what was purchased for $65.72 from Staples Business Advantage? You gave the invoice number in the building line. We went back, or Jen went back and found the invoice, and that was not what we charged. To that budget line, we think that might be an error over in finance. And then, why is postage so much? What are we sending out? I asked Alyssa for this one, and she was kind enough to jump on the computer while I was away and put her thoughts down. So we're mailing overdue notices that are sent for anyone with mailing as their notification option, and billing notices sent for any billed materials. We're not sending out any more than we have in the past years, but we were overspent last year, and now we're in default, so we didn't increase the amount in this line. We also spend postage on out-of-state ILO materials, but we charge a fee now to those patrons, which goes into fines. We could investigate charging patrons postage for their overdue billing notice. That was my idea that I wrote in. Haven't talked to Alyssa about it. So I think we just need to go back and look at this more closely. We're underspent, you know, and we've known that. We've been tracking this. So I think when we went into defaults, that was a line we cut. Probably shouldn't have cut it, but we were looking for places to cut, you know. But if we're charging patrons, you know, I don't think there's anything that says we couldn't charge them postage as well. You know, we just have to, you know, we can buy stamps and keep them separate and say these are stamps for bills. And, you know, otherwise we have stamps for, like, when I send your checks out that are, you know, those bills. But if we can always keep things separate.
I guess I was just really surprised because last month I don't recall, but there wasn't much. And there were it was like almost $160 just from last month. And I was just surprised because it's not usually that high.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, we'll go back and look at it and see. I'm not sure how. It's probably not the unique because they send it directly. So yeah. We'll go back and we can investigate. Do you have other questions on top of these questions?
Nope, that was it. Thank you very much. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
thank you to Jen and to Alyssa because they did the heavy lifting.
Does anybody else have other questions for Yvette? I have a comment, and I know this has come up before, but I just hate late fees. That's that's like money that we could be
I really
using.
hope with the bookkeeper we can eliminate them, 'cause I feel like it's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not intentionally not paying.
I know. It's just, but like
There's a lot going on, and if I don't get to it, or it's sent out late, I mean, I always try to notify you that there are checks. I mean, it would be great if we could figure out, I want to see you 3 days a week. You could come into the library 3 days a week to sign checks. Because I get them, an invoice comes in and it might be a town invoice, but it might be a trustee invoice. It might be a split invoice. So I might have an invoice for you every day.
But it's usually the business cards. So is there a timetable that that it's due on this day, and
Yep.
so that Janet can plan
Yeah.
oh,
Joanne was tracking that much more efficiently than I am.
okay, so maybe hopefully a bookkeeper will take care of that because that's yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, sorry.
Just when we mentioned that was one of the things that was miscategorized, I was like, oh, I wish we didn't even have that, right? That it wasn't an issue. So yeah, I know. All right. So, okay. Anything else for budget? All righty. Okay. Building maintenance and project list. Let's see. Any questions for Yvette regarding the building maintenance and project list?
I saw the chiller walkthrough. It's coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't realize was the same date and time I sent you to meet with the staff. Did you get?
I have an update on that.
Okay. Okay. So we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything about the building projects? No? Okay. All righty. Moving right along. Oh, go ahead.
Will you be able to be there? Okay.
Okay.
Me too.
All right. Policy review. So there was a book club policy for us to look at?
Yes. So, when we write policies, it's usually addressing a situation that happened. So this is just going to help communicate to people who utilize the library services to request books for their book group. Here's the expectation. And we want them to sign a contract. And hopefully that will make everything much more smooth and clear. I did not write this. I'll just say credit to Alyssa, who wrote this. I think she did a wonderful job. And she coordinated with Reggie and Eve, who also handle interlibrary loan requests and know the system very well and are the ones communicating with patrons when they request books, or if we have to remind people to please return it. Because it's borrowed from another library. This is not Gmail. This could be anywhere in the state. So.
Okay, great.
What is the most common item that's being addressed, do you think, with this? Or what, is there?
We changed the date of our book group, so I just need this extended, and we're gonna have it in 2 weeks. Okay, now we have to call the other library, which might be a small library.
Mhm.
And now if you think of it, they lose a certain number of circulations, but that's their one copy that we're requesting. And now they may say no,
Mhm.
So really if someone's gonna, reserve a book for a certain date, that's just, common courtesy to say, we're gonna hold our book group. We're not gonna, change it without notice.
Mm.
Or it just causes a lot of potential problems with the other libraries.
Yeah. Is that, so anecdotally, I also have heard feedback about the book club. I don't know how many there are. Is there many book clubs?
10,
but
12. That's a lot.
Okay, so that's quite a bit. I think there was a question brought forward to me probably a couple months ago at this point about the books that are obtained through interlibrary loan, and then somebody from the book club takes it back, but then it goes back to the source library as opposed to being held for somebody else who still may need to get it. And I don't know that there's any feasible option, to hang on to, said books until such time that the book club
They're due the
has
day
it.
after the book group. They're all, book,
Right. But if somebody
you meet
brings
today
it back
and they're due today
and somebody else still needed it, those go.
after the discussion. No one's going to need it after the discussion
No,
because
no.
we have to return
No,
it.
but somebody brings it back because they finished reading it before the date. And somebody else still needed it.
I think if someone is making a complaint about our procedures, they need to talk to the staff and not a trustee.
Yeah.
Because I don't move these books. I don't move these
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
I
Understood.
get the other staff when someone has an ILL question. I'm
Yeah.
not dealing with that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But the
I
books,
didn't answer the question for them either.
Yeah,
it's not.
the due date is the day of the meeting. So everyone should return or it might be the next day, so everyone returns the books at the same time. We have to wait for them all. I don't know if they wait for them all, honestly. I know I
Yeah,
check
yeah.
them in and I put them in a bin,
Yeah.
but, that's a Eve, Reggie question because they really handle the procedures.
Yeah.
Is the item about the 6-month, the book it's been published within the past 6 months?
Is your microphone on?
I'm sorry. Is the item about books that have been published within the last 6 months are not available from lending
Yeah, because
libraries?
those
is
are
that
new.
new or is
Those
that
are, no.
This
That's
is an old policy.
standard
Thank you.
practice because you have a new book that comes out. It's very popular, and we want our residents to have first pick at that. So those hot books, we call them hot books and GMILKs. Those very popular items. Each library has their own restrictions on when that can be released to outside of their residents or outside of their cardholders. And they're perfectly in their rights to do so.
What is the policy like between you lending libraries about if there's a library book club or book club going on, and I'm not in the book club, but I'm aware of the book because people are talking about it, and I go to the Merrimack Library as a Merrimack person and say, can I get on the waiting list for a book from this lending library or whatever? I mean, is it like a quick turnaround? Like I know you're going to have 20 books, in a week because the book club's over. Can I get it then, or do they have to go back to the sending?
They have to go back to the sending
Okay,
library.
so I'll have
because
to
we
wait a couple of
ask
weeks.
for it again.
Okay.
I
I didn't know if that was the.
But you can put your request in for interlibrary loan that moment, and then it'll generate. Yeah, it'll start the process, but it has to go back to the lending library. However, in GMILKs, our books, because we're in the consortium, our books don't have to go back. We don't have to go back to Merrimack and then back out to Goffstown. It'll just go to Goffstown if someone requests it, and we'll get it when we check things in. It says this fills a hold at Wadley, go straight to Wadley, from Hooksett or wherever. So it's for us, it's much faster.
Any other questions about the policy? Okay, then I'll make a motion that we approve the book club policy.
A second.
Okay, any further comments? Calm down, we're going to vote. All those in favor? Okay, 5-0-0, thank you. Janet's like, let's go. Okay. That was the only policy. Did I miss anything? That was the only policy that you brought for us? Okay, great. Grants is another placeholder. Jen Jobin had started looking into this for us before she left, and we have it on there. So again, it doesn't fall off the radar. Okay, director's report.
Director's report. Find it. Okay. So, we received an anonymous donation of a puzzle, which I sent you a picture of the cover of the puzzle
Mhm.
box, so you can see what it is. Covers of books, covers of children's books, 400 pieces.
I'll make a motion that we accept the anonymous donation of a puzzle.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? 500. Thank
Probably
you.
Build it this summer anyways.
I know, right? So this is going to go into our Library of Things collection. Thank you. We have, according to the treasurer's report, anonymous donations for this month was $136.23.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the $136.23 in anonymous donations.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 500. Thank you.
We received the Friends of the Library's quarterly donation of $300.
I'll make a motion that we accept the Friend of the Library's quarterly donation for $300.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 500. Thank you to the Friends.
And accrued interest in the special account of $4.76.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the $4.76 in interest from the special bank account.
Second.
Okay, those in favor? 500. Thank you.
Okay, so we had a funding request, which I'm thinking maybe can go with office supplies. So I'll just tell you about it. So this is from Alyssa, writing to request passport funds for 2 Nintendo Switch consoles, 1 Xbox Series X console, and the associated cases for in-house use. We've seen a large increase in the use of our gaming consoles within the library by teen patrons who visit after school. However, often there are no consoles in for them to check out and use because they're already checked out. To encourage these patrons to continue to use our space, we would like to have additional consoles available for use within the library only. Having these consoles will also open up more opportunity for program related to video games. The 2 Nintendo Switch consoles in particular would allow us to more frequently host our Mario Kart Live program, which requires 2 consoles, which are difficult to acquire because our circulating consoles are always out. Additionally, with our new teen assistant position filled, we expect to see a lot of use of these consoles for programming purposes. And then she had listed the cost breakdown. So for everything, she is estimating $1,171.70. But we might actually have that in office supplies. You know, I mean, it's in-house use. It's not circulating material, so it wouldn't be material.
Well, I don't know if you saw Janet's thing about passport money.
I did.
Yeah, so that's a concern, right? So I think that we would want it to be spent first from our budget, from our thank you, our appropriated budget from the town. We'd want to use that money first because we don't want to overspend our passport money.
Yeah, I'll look into the office supplies.
Okay.
So, I'm just gonna write myself a note.
We can look at the passport and just review that when we get to the treasurer's report. So,
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. The RFP, so that is posted. It's open until the 14th of March. Walkthrough is scheduled for February 27th at 10 a.m. This is for an HVAC project. A couple of things that I usually, things I want you to know about, I put in red with an underline. The Assistant State Librarian, Mindy Atwood, reported to NHLA and to Hillstown that Governor Ayotte's hiring freeze has affected the job search for the state librarian. There's also concern that President Trump's freeze of federal grants will impact the IMLS grant that funds several services at the state library, including talking books, ILL vans, and as well as the staff positions up there. So, we're concerned. Working on the staff absence. We will get back to that. Alyssa's going to be here sometime to talk about the unique collection pilot. Book group policy you did. On page 4, I included from Denise Van Zanten, who is the director of the Manchester City Library. She's our legislative chair at NHLA, and she specifically asked that these legislative updates are shared with our board. The SB 208, she got an update on that as of yesterday. The primary sponsor of SB 208 is no longer they removed references to the public library in this bill. So even though NHLA is also, the organization also includes and tries to support the school librarians, the public library aspect of that, requiring like collection policies is removed. So NHLA is going to be neutral on the bill. Other ones, you know, I shared HB 562 relative to filling vacant positions on elected municipal and school boards. I shared that with our town manager. HB 143 relative to the issuance of no trespass orders on municipal or school district property. I shared that with the town manager and also the police chief. And the chief said that the Police Chiefs Association is tracking it and they're opposed to that. HB 273, relative to a parent's access to their minor child's library records. This is, I believe it actually passed already. So we have 60 days to update the policy. What we have now, we have cards for children, we have cards for teenagers, we have cards for anyone over 18 or adults. So teens can come in and all they need to do is show their school ID to get a library card. We've had these teenage boys coming into the library. They realized they could check out games while they're in the library to use them in the Lowell room. And so they need to get a library card. We say, do you have your school ID? They go, great, yes, here. They get a card, they check their games out, all is well. What this law would do is you would need to, a parent would need to come into the library, show that they have the same address as the teen or the child. And then they would have access to what is currently checked out. They would have knowledge, they'd be able to have knowledge about what is checked out on this child's card. It's hard for us because right now the teenagers don't have identification that shows their address. So they probably won't bother to get a card. And we're thinking they won't keep coming to the library. We're trying to figure out how can we, you know, validate their proof of address. But right now, the way the policy is written and the way that we're practicing, we don't need it. But with this law, we will need it because if a parent comes in and wants to see what's on their child's card, then we have to be able to confirm this parent lives with this child, so that they can see it. Hey, I was just talking about the library card bill for the minor cards. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
In schools with the family's rights to know, sometimes there's divorced parents that they don't live with the kid, but they do have, 50-50, access to that. So would just the address be?
Well, where we're coming from, and Alyssa can speak much more eloquently on this, your library card information is private. And it doesn't matter if you're 5 or if you're
Right.
55.
Absolutely.
So that's
Well,
that is
it
this
used
is
to
in
be
opposition
private.
to another law.
Ah,
So which law do we follow? The last one that I want to highlight for you is HB 340, and then maybe I'll pause on my report so Alyssa can talk about the unique collection. So this is a bill that's relative to electioneering by public employees. I linked some information for you to read about a situation that happened at the Goffstown Public Library, if you don't know about this. They had put together a questionnaire for candidates. And this was something they've done in years past. And this year, some of the candidates claimed and accused the library director, of electioneering and favoring one side over the other side. They were just, the library was just facilitating the survey. And they polled the community for questions. So these were questions sent to, you know, the organization that was putting the survey together. And it was very heated and very negative. But now there's a bill that exists because of it. So we're gonna have to see how this is gonna play out for any kind of work we do. We're not in the practice of electioneering and we don't do that, but it depends on how is that gonna be interpreted. If I put up a Black History Month book display, am I now electioneering? Maybe I am. I'm not, but maybe someone's gonna think I am. So that's just something you really need to be aware of.
Do we know what the amendment was that was added on the 6th?
I don't, off the top of my head, no, but you can
Go
go,
look it up in there.
absolutely, you should go look it up. And,
Legislative.
yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of activity happening, so, there's just a lot of activity. I don't know if this board feels they could put together a legislative committee or a point person or something. The NHLA is tracking. We have a lobbyist who is hired. However, there's another bill that says that, tax money shall not be used for lobbying. And our dues, and this is, all of the libraries who have staff who are members of NHLA, if they pay their dues, their membership dues out of the municipal allotment, then, the tax money is going towards lobbying. It's nice to have a lobbyist because that is their job, to track these bills. It would hobble us if the bill goes through. It probably will. So, anyway, hi, Alyssa.
Before we walk away from your director's
Yes.
report and Alyssa starts the unique, I just wanted to mention that something you didn't touch on, the bookkeeper position interviews.
Yeah.
It said that you were working with Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I would really appreciate it if Janet could be in on those interviews.
The second ones, not the first one.
Okay.
We
Well,
don't
I just
usually have trustees at interviews that aren't department heads, and not at the first round anyway.
I
so.
understand, but I think it behooves us because this person is going to be overseeing library money.
Yeah, we already talked about this in
And-
department heads.
Okay.
It's just the second round because you don't want to sit through the first round. Listen, a lot of times for positions, I don't sit through the first round. And then they'll call me in for someone who's like a top tier. So we won't waste your time, but we'll get you the top tier.
But can you just address working with Paul McCallie, how?
That's collaborative.
Clever.
Oh, Calabria. Okay, working with Paul Calabria, how?
He's going to give me the questions that accountants ask other accountants.
Okay.
Because I don't know what those questions are. I
Okay.
can ask lots of other questions about teamwork,
Mhm.
getting here on time, but
Okay.
things that are nitty gritty, I'm at a loss. And he offered, and I said, absolutely, thank you. So,
Okay. Is he going to give you the answers too? Because it's hard to evaluate a candidate's. Okay.
yes, he will give me the questions and the answers and be involved. He will
Okay.
be there to help me. So, yes,
Great. Thank you.
sure.
Okay, Alyssa, would you like to
Can you
address?
introduce yourself since we have some people who don't know you?
Yes, so I'm Alyssa Jobin. I'm the head of patron services. So last year, we started contracting with Unique, which is a collections agency, and the board approved a year trial of that. So now that we've hit a year, I've just brought the statistics and some of my recommendations, as well as some of the reports that they send us, so that way the board can review it and decide if we want to continue contracting with them or not. Excuse me. So, I want to start by taking a look at the accounts status report. I think everyone should have it. It should say account status report, hopefully. Well, I was gonna say it looks like this, but this has all of my writing on it, but it has like a little box in the middle.
Oh, this?
Yes, it might have highlights on it. So this is sort of the summary of everything from since we started working with them. But it's a little bit hard to understand looking at it, so I just wanted to go over all the numbers so that way it was clear. I did also attach, hopefully, the explanation of the summary page, which looks like this, and this goes over what everything means, but I'll also just walk through it quickly here. So basically, this report overall is a summary of all accounts submitted and aggregate recovery. So it is the summary of all of the accounts that we have submitted since we started working with them a year ago, and sort of the status of where we are in terms of recovering the materials, the money. So the first piece, the account submitted, that's the number of accounts that we've submitted. It's 79 over the course of the year. And then bankruptcies, incorrect addresses, those are pretty clear. Janet, do you have a question?
I do,
Yeah.
and it's mostly for Donna's purpose. What is the criteria for the accounts submitted?
Yes, so our notice schedule, we send bills out at 40 days overdue. So if anyone has materials that have been overdue for 40 days, they get their 2 overdue notices, and then at 40 days, they're billed for the cost of those materials as lost materials. There's a 20-day window in which the materials can be returned in the condition they were checked out in, and we'll waive the fees. And then at the 20 days after, so it's now 60 days overdue, if they have charges of $40 or more and they're Merrimack patrons, then they're submitted for collections. And the key piece with this is even after the collections process is finished, they're not submitted for credit reporting. So this does not affect their credit score. That's I think they used to do that, but they haven't done that for many years. So that's not a part of the consideration. I view it as more an extension of our notices because our bill at 40 days is the last notice that we have that sends out to patrons. So that's really the last time that we, with our internal notice system, are reaching out to them to get the materials back. Whereas Unique has, and that should also be attached, they have a full notice schedule that includes additional letters and phone calls up through 150 days. So it's very extensive, more than what we internally have as part of our system to contact patrons for overdue materials. Excuse me. So I'll jump back to the summary page. So account submitted, bankruptcies, incorrect addresses, those are all pretty straightforward there. So you'll see we have one incorrect address. When that happens, it goes to, they have a skip tracing process where Unique attempts to find and locate this patron and find their new address. We get reports of any address changes so we can change them in our system. That doesn't happen very frequently, but it is part of that, and you can see that we have the one that's currently in that part of the process. Patron disputes or suspends. This would be if a patron disputed a material. I don't believe that we really have I don't think we have that particular feature turned on, but we on our end can suspend an account. So I've had that happen where a patron comes in and they're working with us to pay it back in maybe smaller increments, and so I'll suspend them so they aren't getting additional notices. We're able to turn that back on later, so if they are not upholding their end of the agreement, we can continue to send the notices. They don't get resubmitted, it's still part of that initial submission. We don't have any accounts in that situation right now though. And then you'll see the accounts in process. So that is the accounts submitted minus bankruptcies, incorrect addresses, and the patron suspends. So that's why we have 78 because we have the one incorrect address. And then this is the key piece, but it doesn't really make much sense. Number of accounts activated, which we have is 37. That's the number of accounts that have responded in some way to reduce the balance. So activated means there's been some activity there, and we've seen some sort of material or payment towards their balance. And then the 37 is 37 accounts activated is about 48% of our total accounts that we have submitted. And that's a good measure of response rate. So we've seen responses from close to half of the accounts that we've submitted. And then I'll go over to the next column there. So very similar things, dollars submitted is the total dollar amount that we've had on accounts submitted to the collections agency. Dollars in bankruptcy, again, we have 0 there. The dollars in skip tracing, so that's connected with that incorrect addresses. So the account that we have with an incorrect address has $539.99 of charges on that account. We know because we only have the one. If there were more, it would just be the total amount of dollars connected to these accounts with incorrect addresses. Dollars in dispute, nothing. And then dollars in process is the dollars submitted and then minus the other 3 below that. And then we have the total activated and percent of dollars activated. So that lines up with those number of accounts activated. It's just the amount connected to the activated accounts and then the percentage of the dollars activated. So you'll see that the good news is we have more of a greater majority of the actual amount is connected to accounts that have had some response, since we were at 55% of the total dollars activated there. And then on the last column, again, pretty self-explanatory. We have dollars received, materials received, and dollars waived. So dollars received is anyone that's done a payment. Materials returned is anyone who's returned materials. We waived the fees on those. And dollars waived, that's actually either for other libraries' processing fees, which we will waive those. We don't need material back or payment for those. Or for ISBN, exact ISBN replacements. So we waive the material cost without having the material back yet. I think that most of these are actually from fees there. So dollars waived is sort of a non-issue. It's not really money that we had lost in the first place, if that makes sense. So we basically, our total recovery amount that we had so far, if you total up the dollars received and the material returned, is around $4,297.83. So that's the combination of actual money we've got and the materials that we've returned, that people have returned. Are there any questions on this? Any more? Yeah. Yeah.
Do you mean the price of the materials?
Yes, so this is based on the price of the materials as we have in the item records, which is typically what we paid for them. And usually they stay about the same. Like we essentially look at it as this is what we would have to pay to replace it because this is what we had to pay to purchase it in the first place.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So
yeah.
So what happens when someone brings something back, like after, like, what did you say? You said
60
after your 60 days. Yeah. Is it like, do you buy?
So we have in our notice and billing policy that materials that come back after that time frame can be accepted back at the discretion of the
Right.
patron services, which is me. So what we typically do is basically once something has gone to billing and then had that sort of 20-day window where they can return things, after that point, whoever's in charge of that collection can go ahead and reorder it. If it's something that we wanted to reorder, or if it was like if we had a hot book that was out and we really wanted to make sure we had another copy in, we would typically reorder that pretty quickly after that window has closed. If we have already replaced it and someone brings a material back at that point, typically I won't accept it back. But if we haven't replaced it back, we usually will, and then we'll waive the costs.
So if you
Yes.
don't take it back,
Yep.
do you then charge them?
Yes. So they have essentially paid for the material already. The charges are on their account, so they can keep the material, but they are responsible for those charges still.
Is
That's-
that
yeah.
part of the material, the dollars received?
That would be dollars received. Yeah,
Okay.
if it was a material we didn't accept back and we left the charges on their account and they paid for it, it's under dollars received. If it was a material that we accepted back, we checked back in, it continued to circulate, it's gonna be under materials returned.
What is the cut that this company takes? Do we pay them a monthly fee, or are they taking
So-
money out of the dollars returned?
For each submitted account, we pay $11.65. So when an account is submitted, that's how much we pay for it. We have, at the end of the month, we have a monthly minimum of $65. So they have to submit accounts up to $65, or they will adjust the price to meet the minimum of $65. When we submit an account, we do add an automatic $10 charge on that account to recoup most of the cost of submitting it. So if we were to submit a patron for, we'll say, and even $40 of materials, they will owe us $50 because we'll have that $10 fee when they're submitted. So we're essentially paying $1.65 for each submitted account,
Except when they're not paying.
except when they're not paid.
then we're eating
Correct.
the $10.
Right. So
Actually
we're
eating
eating the
the
$11.65.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Right. So it's sort of a trade-off where if we didn't, what the initial piece of starting this collections agency was that we didn't have any notices further than our final bill, and then nothing else, no other communication with the patron, which is bad twofold, because first of all, we're not giving more notices to get the materials back, and second of all, we're probably never seeing the patron again. And we really, the goal is to have people using the library. We want to work with them to get them back in, to continue using the library, to reduce their charges, to be able to check items out again. And so with Unique specifically, they work with libraries. So their goals are oriented towards trying to get the patron back into the library. So they have this notification system that's set specifically to try and guide the patrons back in. I don't really remember where I was going with this.
If you,
I'm sorry, I don't remember
right.
what your initial question was.
if you have a outstanding
Yes.
balance with
Yep.
the library,
Right.
you are not allowed to check anything else out, correct?
So we have a $10 minimum. So if you have charges up to $10 or any lost materials, which is essentially any charges, because we don't charge fines anymore. That's a little bit like a weird circulation thing where sometimes we'll have patrons that have charges from other libraries that total up to $10 that are non-materials. Basically, if you have a charge for material, yes, you can't check out any materials until that's been resolved or part of your balance has been resolved.
And it's $10.
It's $10, yeah.
I know you said that we tried it last year.
Mhm.
And so you took all of the outstanding accounts and sent them to Unique
So
that were
we
past
sent-
the 60 days.
We sent back to, I think, the beginning of 2023. Anyone that had charges that fit our criteria back to the beginning of 2023.
So basically $10,000
Mhm.
is 2 years worth.
Yes.
So if I said $5,000 a year is how much money we lose, would that be
Possibly.
possibly? Okay.
Yeah. The thing that's a little bit tricky with this is I don't have any way to pull records of what we lost and recovered prior to using this,
Gotcha.
That was
So
my
Prior to
question.
using what?
to using Unique.
Yeah, that was my question. If we knew how
So
much the difference
you don't
it
have
made.
there's no system, Polaris or whatever you have to
I can
go back.
I can tell you any accounts that have outstanding charges prior to that, but I don't. That doesn't reflect like things that have been lost and come back. Like there's no because the big thing is the recovery. How much were we recovering without it versus how much are we recovering with it? And there's no way, because if we recovered it, the material's back, the charges are cleared. So there's no way for us to compare that, unfortunately, because I think that would really be like the key piece. I think for me, I have like a whole list of things to go over here, so this could be long, but we can cut through things if it's too much. But for me, I want to feel that we're doing our due diligence with trying to get these materials back. When we had, this is where I was going when I was talking to you earlier. So prior to this, we had a few accounts that had very, very high charges for a lot of materials, and they'd already been billed, and then it was sort of like, okay, I'd really like to have more notices for this, but we don't have any way of doing that. And then I would have to see if I could run some kind of report to pull up these accounts, and then we have to figure out, well, how do we send notices? So then we had done a few certified letters, which is very similar in price to just submitting an account to Uni. It's like, at that time, it was maybe $9.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's more expensive now. So we're probably approaching the $11.65 plus the staff time and effort to put together a new bill from scratch, because it wouldn't be manually generated. So I'd have to pull the accounts, put together the bills with all of their items. We have to go to the post office to send it out. And then that's also still only one notice. Whereas we can pay a similar price, maybe a little bit higher. Also, we're not going to recoup any money sent on a certified letter, because then we'd have to go and manually put a charge in the account. It's just additional staff time. Whereas this, they have a full notice system. The phone calls and letters are coming from a third party and not from the library, which I also think is beneficial, because when they come in and talk with library staff, they're talking with like a fresh face. It's not that the person you see at the desk is the person calling you and telling you have to bring these back because you owe XYZ amounts of materials. It's totally different. So it sort of helps with, it sort of puts the hard stuff of the hard money stuff not on the library staff, which helps maintain the relationship between the patrons. And plus it just really cuts down on the staff time it would take to try and do these extra notices. And when we were trying to track down some of these bigger accounts, it was just a lot of work, and it felt like we really were, but it still felt like we weren't doing enough to like contact these patrons and have more interaction with them and make sure that they were receiving the notices. So, if a patron has email notifications and maybe they're filtering it to their spam, the only notice them they're getting is their physical bill. Now they've only received what they see as one notice from us, and then we don't contact them again. Now we've lost a patron. Whereas if we can have this additional notice option, it's just more notices, more reminders. They have, I didn't bring these or have them submitted, but I think we looked at them when we first done it, but they have like the examples of the letters that they send and the scripts that they have, and they're very patron friendly, very library oriented. They only contract with libraries, so they're very in line with our goals, which is why I was pushing to work with them in terms of at least their sort of work methods. They align with our goals well that way. Any questions? Okay, I'll go to my next part. So I did have as well another report that looks kind of similar, but it's longer. It's this one. This is the progress report. I just blocked out the first column because it was just patron names. So I didn't want to have just the patron names on everything there. And this is just an example of what it would look like monthly. So this is, the last 6 months. So this is basically the progress on accounts from the last 6 months. So this was from August of last year through the end of January. So you can see there the dates that they were listed, the total amount that they were listed for. There's another column for if there were any materials added, which some do. Sometimes someone has checked things out and sort of the staggering of it, they get submitted and then a few days later another item goes to billing. So that gets added. Then you'll see how much was collected and if it was material or cash or waived. So there's two waives on here, and those were both processing charges for other GMILKS libraries. So we waived those. And then you can see the current balance, as well as if they've paid something or returned something, when that activity was, and then what their current status is. So, paid in full is what we like to see the most. So we've got quite a few of those. Contact in process and initial placement are both pretty similar. It's like the initial placement is like they're collecting the information, making sure all of their information's correct, so that way they can start contacting them, and contact in process is what it sounds like. And then you'll see we do have the one mail returned, and that's the one that's connected to that incorrect address in the skip tracing. So this is what this progress report looks like, and you'll see down at the bottom that sort of summarizes how many accounts were listed during this time, the total amount, and how much we've recovered. So I just wanted to provide this as an example so you can see what that report looks like. We get a very similar one for the monthly reports, but it's much smaller. So I just figured the 6-month one was a little bit easier to illustrate sort of what these reports look like. Anyone have any questions about this? Okay. I thought this one was a lot more straightforward than the account summary report.
Yeah. Like some of these date back to August that still say like contact in process. At what point, or even this, contact in process. So the ones that are older say contact in process, and there's nothing been, like their balance is the same, nothing's been collected. At what point does that stop?
Yep, so it's at their notices, their final phone calls are days 151 through 154. So we're, I think 6 months is I'm like, how many days is that? How many months is that?
180 days would be 6 months.
Yeah, but we've already had it for 60 before it goes to them, so.
Right. But
Are
it's
they
after
sending
that.
it 151 past when it was due, or 151 from when they got from us?
I think it's from when they got it. I think it's
Yeah.
from when the contact in process started.
Okay.
So they have this initial placement where they're making sure everything looks good. So it's 150 days after the first notice that they've
so
sent.
it's over 6
So
months.
these
total.
are pretty much like the ones that were at the beginning here are like probably about to be done, or they're done. I mean, at this point they're probably done. But this was, the end of January was when we got this one. So pretty much everything on this list is any of the ones that are still like active with the agency. So you'll see there are some that are paid in full, and they're on here because they're like basically their 150 days aren't up yet, but we don't have to do anything with them. They've paid in full. They're clear, which is great. Yeah, and we have, this is 34 out of 79, so there's other accounts in there from prior that their contact is complete, and some of those are paid in full, some of them still have outstanding charges. And with the outstanding charges, they do have a cleanup of older accounts option, which this was, I don't know that this is new, but it was something that I didn't have a lot of information on previously. So I'll want to check in with our contact for it to get a little bit more information about this specifically. But basically they have an option where if you have accounts that are older, even if they've been submitted previously, or if they haven't, but we have older accounts further out than we would typically go, we can basically do a fresh submission of them. So we would pay the submission amount again, but if we decided, hey, we want to try and get things back from a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that, there's a process through here, which I think is probably very similar to what we did when we started, where we went back to 2023 and we said, can you submit this far back? I believe it's something very similar to that, where we can say, we want this time frame of accounts and we want to submit it. And if it's something we've submitted before, sure, we can have them try again, or it could be fresh. But either way, we'd have to pay the submission again. But that is an option if we said, okay, if we have an account that we've submitted previously, but it's been a year since the last contact and we want to try one last time, we have that as an option as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, so what I also wanted to mention was in QuickBooks, when we are looking at the amounts that we've collected so we'll see, obviously we pay out an amount to Unique every month, and then we also have what amounts we've had come in from collections. The only thing that's actually going to show up there is that $10 fee. Any materials that come back obviously won't go through QuickBooks at all, because it's just the material coming back and we waive the fee and everyone's happy and we clear the account, we move along. And then any paying for charges, that's just going to go into our replacement costs, and there's no connection to that being part of an account that was submitted. So if you look at it in there, it looks really bad, because it's like, oh, we've paid out around like $1,000 for the year and we've got back, 100 or something. I don't actually know how many we've had back, but Janet knows, and it there's a really big discrepancy there, because you have to look at the Unique reports to see what the cost of the materials was and what we've had come back. It's just is what it is. There's no way for us to have that connect in our banking there. So if anyone looks at that, don't be alarmed. It's working how it should be. It just doesn't look great. And then let's see, I talked about, had all the things I wanted to go over. We already talked about the notices. Let's see. Oh, the other piece, so this was, so in May through October of 2024, I talked about how we have the $65 minimum. So these 6 months, we were below the $65 minimum. And to get to $65, it's like 6 accounts submitted, puts us at like $69.90, and that's what gets us over. So we had anywhere from 2 to 5 accounts submitted during this time. There's nothing to compare this to, so I don't know if it's just like summer people are bringing things back more or something. I don't know, because we haven't had it since November. We had 10 submitted and we've had over the amount since, and at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the year was when we started it, so we had a whole bunch that were submitted there anyways. So we're at the $40 minimum for that's when we submit the accounts right now. We chose that because that's what Manchester City Library has as their minimum. They were the ones that recommended using this. They're the only other GMILCS library that is contracted with a collections agency. And so we decided to basically stay in line with what they're doing and see how that looked. Unique actually recommends submitting accounts at $25. And their reason for that is that you want to catch the accounts sooner, so that way it's not quite so daunting for the patrons to take care of. So I'm a little bit on the fence about it, because I was looking back at sort of what accounts we have currently in the like $30 to $35 range, in terms of like outstanding balances. And we had a few, I don't know that bringing it down would necessarily always get us up to that submission amount. I mean, it also is kind of, seems like it kind of fluctuates. It just depends on when people are checking things out and not bringing them back, and that's just how it's going to be. But I think 25 feels very low, because that's like one book and collections agency, which it's like, that's still $25 that the library has to pay to get this material back if you don't return it. But also we want to maintain a good relationship with the patrons. It doesn't, like collections feels scarier, even though it's not going to credit reporting. So, you know, we don't want to be like, one book and we're on you. If once you hit $30 though, it seems like it tends to be multiple items, usually like 2, sometimes 3, depending on what the materials were. And 35 is usually like multiple items or like one bigger ticket item. So I think if we you know, continue to use this, it might be a good idea to bump it down, the submission amount, to $35 or $30 at the time when we would submit. Partially to make sure that we're hitting our minimum, that we're getting the most value out of this service, and also because it, you know, what Unique says about trying to catch the patrons earlier does make sense. We're kind of just trying to strike a balance between making sure that we get the materials back without like feeling too aggressive for it and going a little bit too soon. So that between 30 and 35, there wasn't that much of like a difference in terms of the amount of materials that we could have potentially seen submitted. I think it was like maybe 10, like if we had, looking back, if we had submitted things at $35, there were like at least 6 accounts that would have gone in. And if we did 30, it would have been like at least 10 accounts. So not like a huge difference, but it could have at least like make sure we got the most value out of this service that we're using. So that would be like a change that I think would be worth looking into and maybe making, and sort of just seeing how that goes. That was my big thing where I was like, here's something where we're kind of missing a piece, and it's that we weren't hitting those minimum submissions during sort of like that summer time. And it could be that this year we suddenly have a whole bunch. I mean, the good thing is we aren't seeing a lot of patrons that need to get submitted for it. I mean, that's really ideal. We don't want to have a whole bunch of people that are holding onto materials and that are over $40 and that we have to hunt down. But at the same time, like, we have to justify having a service that we're paying for. So, you know, it feels like we were really, really close most months. I think it was like 1 or 2 months we had 2 submissions and the rest were like 4 or 5. So it seems like we're pretty close to that threshold. When I had first looked at this based on the sort of estimated numbers, I thought we would see about 9 to 10 submissions a month. So this is lower than what I'd expected. But it was kind of a rough estimate based on some of the numbers they had for submitting at $25. So it makes sense that it would be a little bit lower than that since we have a higher threshold. The good news is that when I first proposed this and talked with Carlos over at Manchester, he has said that they typically recoup 2 to 3 times the amount that what they pay for in the service, which is, we are seeing that. We had somewhere, I think the total amount that we paid over the last year to Unique was $1,130.70, and the dollars and materials, the total recovery amount that we saw was $4,000, around $4,300. So that's, you know, close to 4 times the amount. So at least we are seeing the sort of results that we were expecting that way. And, you know, when I look at the total amount, it's like, you know, we're paying around $1,000 to Unique to recover around $4,000 of material. And if we weren't, then we have $4,000 of material to replace. You know, it's impossible to say how much of that would come back if we didn't have unique, so that's a consideration. But it is nice to know that they are doing these extra notices for us. You know, we did get over $4,000 worth of materials back. It is also nice that we get these reports and we can see the amounts of materials that we're losing. I mean, this is only for these, like, I guess it's the amounts of materials that we're losing on accounts that have like higher charges, sort of people who are holding on to more stuff or more expensive stuff. And it's not that many. I mean, around 80 submissions from the last 2 years is pretty good. You know, that it feels good for our community that we have, you know, people bringing materials back and they're using the library as intended. You know, but there's always things that will get sort of lost. I think overall, I like this service because it feels like we are continuing to reach out to patrons and make sure we're trying to get our materials back without like unnecessary extra staff time on it. I think that we probably going forward would want to lower that threshold for when we submit accounts, see how that goes. I think we can really change that at any time. So if we did that and then we were like, this is, you know, we're getting lots of patrons who are very concerned about it, feels like it's too much, we could raise it again, sort of see how it goes. But overall, it's hard because we can't compare it to previous years, and there's no way to get that, unfortunately. So we just sort of have to use our best judgment with if we feel like it's worth it, which for me, when I think about, you know, if we didn't have it, I would still feel that we should at least have some additional notice for, especially for some accounts with some really high ticket items, like our Library of Things items, where we feel like we really should try and do more to get those back. But that's additional work, additional time, and there's still money involved there in sending out notices and things like that.
Alyssa, I love your description of how you try to keep the relationship with the patrons, you know, and so to have them do right by the bill or the materials gives them sort of a clean slate,
Right.
and they feel like, you know, now
Yeah,
I'm good.
We've
Yeah.
seen that a lot since going fine free as well.
Yeah, good.
I think that really gets patrons back into the building because they don't have this sort of guilt about I have to pay for this fine because my kid got sick and I wasn't able to get in, and oh my gosh, and now I have 30 cents of fines and I feel so bad. But it's like it's really not a big deal. There's no fines, and so people have been really happy with that change, and it's made the over-the-counter service with patrons so much smoother, so much friendlier because we don't have to sort of nickel and dime them for these charges. And I think this is just a similar way of trying to make sure that we're continuing to get our items back because we have to, without shaming the patron or making it difficult for them. Trying to work with them as much as possible, and that's why I really liked Unique's service. They have, I think they call it like their gentle nudge approach, and their goal is to get the patrons back and talk with us in the library so we can resolve it with them. And I haven't had really any feedback actually over the year from patrons. That was, I would bring it if I did, but any patrons that have had that charge have just been like, okay, like I haven't had feedback positive or negative. I mean, I don't know that anyone that would know really would be someone who's been charged for it, and I don't think they really say something positive about it. But we haven't had anyone say anything negative about it. It's just sort of been like a fact of life. I think because we're fine free, they're not they typically don't have to deal with any charges. So when they have that like one $10 charge, it's not too big of a deal. Usually, most times, if they're bringing the materials back, we're like, well, normally you would have had to pay, $55, but we can take these back because you brought them back, and you're just for $10, and that's a much easier sell, and people are, usually happy, and their accounts are cleared, and they can get back to using the library as usual.
Has it freed up staff time as well to focus on other tasks?
Yeah, so I was doing it before a little bit. I hadn't been doing it for very long, I would say. It was more I had noticed some of our bills were very high items. And so I was kind of keeping track loosely of some of these accounts. And when I wasn't seeing them resolved, then it was like, okay, what do we do now? And there were a couple of accounts that I can remember that were very, very high charges. They had a lot of materials out. And since the notices would have to be created manually for additional bills, it took a really long time to put it together because we had to like pull all the information that we normally would have in a regular like automated bill and like type it all in manually. Like we had to put in the full title and the barcode and the material type and the cost and calculate all that out. So, and then we wanted to send it. We sent a regular mail, but then we were like, no, this doesn't mean anything. So then we sent certified mail, and then that means someone else had to go to the post office and send it and pay for it. And it was like, yes, if we were doing that regularly, it would be a lot of staff time and work. We as like the library staff here, we could never reach this level of notices on our own in any way. I mean, if we were doing it, it's like we'd have to hire a whole other person to just keep track of all these notices, and then also we'd be spending so much money on each notice that we'd have to send out. It's pretty much like we have this, or we have maybe one extra notice on top of bills, or we just say we've decided that billing is what we were doing before, where a bill was the last point of contact. That's what we're just going to go back to that. Those are pretty much the two options that are feasible.
Have you guys in the past done for big ticket items any kind of not
like a payment plan?
Yeah, not a charge, but like a credit card to take a $400 power washer. You know, like I'm not going to charge your card unless you don't bring it back or something like that. You know how I have to give
Can you explain that?
Like holding it, like it's when you go to a hotel
Yeah.
and they hold your credit card just in case there's any damage kind
Yeah.
of thing.
I
Like
see.
that's
Or like a deposit.
yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
No, we haven't. I think that could potentially be a hardship. I think especially with something like a pressure washer where it's an expensive piece of equipment.
Yes.
Which of course it's expensive for the library if it goes away and we have to replace it. But also the goal of having it in the library is that it's an expensive piece of equipment that you don't need to use regularly. And so for someone who can't afford to purchase that themselves, or just for a regular person who doesn't want to because they don't have the place to store it at their house or whatever, they can come to the library, they can check it out and use it the one time that they'll use it in their whole life without having to spend $400 on it themselves.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And some people don't have credit cards or
Right.
any way to offer collateral.
And
so
I
that
would
makes
worry
sense.
about
Available to
putting our
everybody.
staff also in an awkward position with credit card numbers sort of
Absolutely.
floating around there. They do sign something for
They
the
have to
library
sign a
things.
waiver,
Yeah, for
but
waiver for library
That's
things.
for liability.
Mhm.
The piece that says you have to pay for this if you lose it is getting a library card.
Mhm.
So the waiver is for, I won't point this at my eye and turn it on.
So, yeah, in case I
Like the
spray myself
library.
with a pressure washer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, does anybody have any questions for Alyssa? Any other questions for Alyssa? Like
I think
anything?
that's really helpful
Mhm.
information.
Thank
I
you.
feel like I said a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
but there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
numbers and a lot of
Mhm.
factors, and there's the numerical piece as well as the actually using it and
Mhm.
and how we interact with patrons over
It was helpful. No, it was a lot. Thank you.
It was a
So-
nice way of presenting. Yeah.
Who decides? Like, does Unique decide, or just who decides who's getting submitted?
We do. Well,
Well,
it's based on, our
the
part-
months
yeah.
that are less than 5.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you can't hold that till the next month?
I think it's when it hits that, because we have our notice schedule. So we say once we hit 60 days overdue, that's when I want you to pull that account and submit it.
But we would pay $65 a month whether we submitted 0 or
Yes.
5, because that's part of the.
Yes.
I guess that's what I'm asking. So because we have the service, regardless of how many we submit,
Mhm.
it's 65 or higher.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then my other question for you is, so you made a couple comments about doing the gentle nudge from Unique and getting to them sooner. Is there any reason why after the 40 days, that's our notices, like you could just stop the 20 days and go right to Unique?
So the reason that we did that, we actually had that as part of our notice and billing schedule before, and it was basically so that way staff who purchased for the collections had a time frame of when they could repurchase items while still giving patrons some leeway. So if they get the bill at 40 days and then we say we repurchased it on day 41, they just received their bill and they're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize I still had that item. We want to give patrons some time window where they can say, oops, I didn't realize I still had this item out. I want to bring it back and have that waived. And then, but if we didn't have it was maybe 6 months before we had started this, we had sort of implemented this 20-day time frame more for staff. So that way we felt like, okay, we've given them a window that feels reasonable. Now at this point I can go and repurchase whatever items I need and now when the patron brings it back, we've given you a time frame. You could have brought it back in that time. Now if we've reordered it, you're on the hook for the price of this item. So it really makes sense for us to do that just for like our internal procedures.
Okay.
Can I just jump in really quick? So based on that,
Mhm.
anything that goes to Unique,
Mhm.
we've either reordered it because we wanted it, or we didn't reorder it because we didn't really need it.
Yes.
So why would we Unique be doing anything besides money?
Sorry.
Yeah, it's more
I
like
was going to say my own library piece.
it's more like we've put it on a list to say we want to reorder it.
Okay.
And in terms of how our budget is shaking out for the year, sometimes I know, especially in children's, because they have, picture books, someone can come in and check out a stack of 30 picture books at a time, and that's like lowballing. Like we can have more and more and more than that. And, things get lost and they just, like, those materials disappear and come back all the time. And so keeping up with reordering of those is like at like an end of the quarter type thing.
Okay.
Like the ordering, because we have to order our new materials and be on top of those, and so the reordering of lost materials gets pushed to like, here's when I have a pocket of money because I've had to order all of these new and popular things. Here's when I can do my catch up on my reordering lost
So
materials.
even after you send it to collections, you may still really want the materials back.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So it might be a material that we want and plan to reorder, but if we get it back and it's in the condition it went out in before it gets time to reorder it, we will happily take it back because it's less time and effort for us to have to, well, first of all, communicate with the patron that, no, you still have to pay for this, and then we have to order it and we have to relabel it and sticker it and all of that stuff. So it's much better to just get the material back. Everyone's happier that way. But there can be a pretty big delay between when we decide we want to reorder something and when we actually do the ordering.
Yeah, I think about it like, it might be really nice to have this baking cookbook, for instance, but people aren't coming in every day asking, like, do you have that baking cookbook from 10 years ago? But when you get it back, you're like, awesome. We have this. This should be like a staple part of our collection, but it's not something people were beating down our door for
Right.
versus like the latest hot books or something that you need
Yeah.
right
We need to
away.
get this
I just didn't know if, like, when
Yeah.
Unique takes it, are they calling asking for money? Or are they calling asking for the materials? Or have we told them we want money or materials? Or is it, hey, you owe the library money or materials, bring it back to the library? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we have like the whole scripts of what they say, and I don't have them with me. I can't remember exactly what it says, but I know that their whole thing is they're trying to guide the patron to communicate with us.
Okay.
So it in some way basically says, you have an outstanding balance with your library, go contact your library and take care of it.
So when they're paying, are they paying Unique or are they paying us?
They're paying us.
Okay.
Yep. we pay Unique the amount that we pay them for a submission, and then everything else, all of the revenue comes back to us. If they accidentally send a check to Unique, like using their address, Unique would get it back to us. That was something that they were very clear about when we had like done a demo with them.
So we voted to do this for a year. So we are at the point where we as a board have to decide if this is something we want to continue, if it's something we want to continue and ask for an annual report to review it each year to see how it's evolved and if it's still worthwhile. What would be the pleasure of the board? Any thoughts?
I think I appreciate multiple components of it, and maybe primarily for that extra lift on the part of the team to do that tracking and reminders. And, you know, I think given that there's not an abundance of time and hours in the day to do some of that work, and that this has been, I would say, had significant success, I don't know, I like it.
I'm fine with the $40. I understand that your effort to want to make it worth its while, but I still feel like $30, I'd be like, really? For $30? Because that is one book nowadays. Like you could buy one hardcover book. I don't know. I feel like $40 is still a good amount, but I don't know how other people feel.
Because I look at the QuickBook data, given the dollars received and the materials received in terms of dollars and the QuickBook money, it ends up being a third of the total dollars submitted. So it's like $3,300 is what we got back, which is a third of what was submitted. I'm just torn because I want the materials back, but it's not apples to apples to me in terms of I see money going out, but I don't have a way to have, like, I don't see the material, like the money coming back in is probably the best. It's not the same. And I really wish, like 3 years ago, we didn't do anything. So if the materials came back, okay, they came back. If they didn't come back, we didn't do anything. So, and it was like that. I mean, I remember probably 6-7 years ago, we literally had meetings where we would say, you know, we have $5,000 of waived fines that we need to just say, these people are done.
Yeah.
And we just waived it. So
I will say the difference between fines versus materials is fines is money we never had in the first place. Whereas
True.
materials is stuff that we've purchased and now we have to purchase again. For, you know, a lot of this, I mean, that's a lot of, you know, for that, how much have we had? Almost $10,000 of material. That's a lot of stuff.
yes,
And-
but you've only gotten a third of that back.
Right, but we could potentially have had none of that back.
True.
But we don't know how much we would have had without it, which of course that would be, if we could see that, we could say yes or no. It's very obvious, but we don't have that, so we can't.
I agree. Yes.
And I think
That's where
that,
my
and
disconnect is.
I can't remember the exact number, but I just remember reading about the associated costs with replacing material that you already had, because it's not just the staff time. Labels aren't cheap, covers aren't cheap, tape isn't cheap. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but like hardcover to put on a paperback book is like $3 or something. You know, so like it starts to add up, just the material costs associated with it. So you've lost the material you've had and all the materials you used to process it, and now you're getting another one, and you have to pay for all the materials you processed it. So it's not just the cost of the individual item, not to mention the staff time to put it on the computer, do all the, you know, there's just so many things that go into it time-wise that we can't necessarily come up with, and material-wise that we can't come up with an exact financial amount. But I think it's compelling to think also about the people who now came in and have a clean slate, which they might not have ever set foot in there. I think, and that's really what we're here to do, right? That's what we're trying to support necessarily, more than just the money and the materials are nice for sure, but those people now have a clean slate, and you weren't the ones that had to keep going at it. So I really appreciate that, because it is hard after you've been the person on the phone with them and then they come in, now you're a clean slate for them to start over with. So and you meet them joyfully. Yay, thank you. We're happy to get this, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm in favor of continuing it and just reassessing after a year, because maybe 2 years in, we'd have a better picture, or the board at the time would have a better picture of, was this just a one-off because we had so many, or not, you know, or
I would
6
definitely
months
like
even.
to reassess it at least on a yearly basis, because, as you said, we've had a couple of months that we didn't meet the minimum. And then that, like, if that continues to be a trending thing, I don't want to pay for collections that we don't necessarily need.
So then maybe it's that the board votes to have it reviewed after 6 months, or you could do a year. You could do 6 months, or ask Alyssa, come back in a year unless you notice a pattern of that we're not meeting the minimum. You know, then maybe it needs to be reassessed sooner. I don't know.
I generally like the idea of a year because it gives you the time to look at the patterns to see if the same patterns present themselves, whatnot.
Yeah, if we went 6 months out from now, we're like hitting the middle of this like dead period, sort of. So I think it would be nice to do a year, because then we can see, is this like some sort of trend? We just don't see all these materials during this time, or is it just this past year? I don't know.
How do people feel about the $40 minimum? I've already expressed how I feel, but I mean, I'm open to suggestions. So
I'd be okay leaving it 40 at this point and reassessing that piece again. I don't know that there's strong evidence, in my opinion, going in either direction.
25 feels really low, considering the fact that then we're going to charge them a $10 fee on 25. So the 40 seems, I mean, maybe I would go down to like 30 or 35, but like a $10 fee on $25 just seems like a lot. Like it almost seems like half at that point.
If you have, like, they're not allowed to check out anything after $10, and if they're at 35, they're not going to get a notice.
Right.
So-
No. So if they're at 35, they'll still get a regular bill.
They'll get it, okay?
Yeah.
right, but they won't be able to check anything else out and
Right,
but they
and,
won't.
and increase it.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, the only time we see it increase is if someone checked out materials and then they checked out more materials, like, you know, a week or two
Right.
later, you know, sometime
Right.
before they got their first bills, and now we just see like staggered billing as they keep not returning things. Right, but after they've been billed the first time, like once they've hit the first time, they can't come in and check out more materials without clearing some part of their account.
well, and I think that the automatic renewals are wonderful, but it also can leave some of us who maybe take out more books than we should going, oh, I forgot I even had that book because I've just had it and it's been renewing for a while. So I think there's some of that
Yeah,
too.
it happens
So,
to me
yeah.
all the time, and I'm
Yeah.
in the library every day.
yeah.
And I will say, the new computer system, well, I think searching for books is wonderful and all of that. The notices you get via email about books that are due, it was really nice that, like, you had all of the books you have checked out on one list.
Oh, the new notices.
The
with
notice
the-
is just, this is, you know, this one is due or whatever. And you're not giving me the whole list of what is in my house. And so
Oh, yeah,
that,
so you're-
I don't
I see
know,
what you're
like,
saying.
if that's a tweet, like,
I can look. So that's
it's just,
Is it the new ones where you see like the picture?
you
of the
see the
item?
picture. And
So-
so you get the picture of, like,
Yeah.
the 2 books that are due now. But before, it would be like, well, the due date's changed on these, but then you still have this
Yeah.
list of that you have, and these are their due dates. So
Yeah, so that's part of our LX starter, which is a new notices thing through Polaris that we as GMILKs are in now, which I don't know if the board voted on it or if it was that Polaris said you have to do this now. I'm not really sure, but I'm the one in charge of like making our new notices for that, so I can see if it's possible to add that in.
it's just very like you get more
yeah.
emails, but then you don't, like, I can't just pull up a list and do an inventory on the way to the library because we check we check out a lot of things sometimes, and so it's nice to just be able to pull up the last email about due dates and then have the whole list. So
Yeah, I can see if that's possible to add on there. Basically, like, we tried to keep it as simple as possible. The system for making those is not super intuitive. We've had a lot of, I think Merrimack is the only one whose notices are actually sending properly. So we've been fortunate there, but the creation of them has been kind of a pain, just as it's like this new thing that we're really all trying to
Yeah.
work with. I can see if I can adjust
Yeah.
that.
It'll
I
just
might
be,
not be
well,
able
and
to.
it might be interesting to see how it affects the people who
Right.
go into like overdue notices and stuff like that. If now, you're not getting the whole list, you end up with more.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a motion that we continue the unique program with the current parameters and have it reviewed again at February 2026 meeting. So it would give it a full year.
Second.
Okay. Any
Second,
further
sorry.
discussion?
Can
Okay.
I ask, that means you're gonna want data from,
We could do both. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I would guess that the board would want to see what comes up next year and compare it to the year before and see if there is
Yeah.
that. Okay. All those in favor? Okay. 500. Thank you, Alyssa. That was a very comprehensive and edifying presentation.
for bearing with me. I know
No,
it's not
there
the
was a
most
lot of-
exciting information to go over.
No, there was a lot of, but it was nice that they give you such a good report that makes it really easy to.
Yeah, it was the hardest part I think was learning how to read the reports
Mhm.
because they do have pretty good instructions. So that was helpful.
Great. Well, great. Thank you. And thank you for coming over at the end of your day. We appreciate it.
Do you want me to stay for more? Because I have more things that are mine in there.
you can.
I'll hang out.
Okay. Great.
Some other
Welcome.
things
Welcome.
that I
Okay.
can leave that for you guys, but since I'm here,
Okay.
if you have questions, then you can ask me
Okay.
directly instead of asking Yvette, and then she has to come back and ask me.
Okay.
I don't have anything else going
Okay.
on tonight.
All right, Eva, do you have anything else from your director's report? That-
Just a couple of things.
Mhm.
As I said earlier, we did have to no trespass
Mhm.
a minor patron who was disruptive in the library. They were vandalizing the library and throwing materials around, yelling and swearing to myself and one of the other staff. They were with a tutor. Tutor was not able to control them, so we called the police. Police were on site. They managed the situation and served the no trespass on my request. And so now we have, just need to update you when we have a no trespass. It doesn't happen very often. It's very unfortunate. So you had gone through materials with your staff to see if anything was actually damaged.
Yeah, nothing was. I think like the display, some of our display things were a little rumpled, but none of our actual materials were damaged.
But they took down several shelves worth of books and just threw them around. Yeah. So that's that. Just put this one over here.
Okay.
Just, yeah. Another thing that we have here is we received a payment from Princh, which the board had directed me to communicate with Princh back in June that we were not renewing, and we got a payment. So this is something we have to go back and.
Oh.
Are you okay? Yeah, we have to go back with Princh and find out why. I talked to Alyssa about it, and it's just that the charge showed up. So I don't know if people have saved the account in their phone or computer or something, but
Print was a remote printing thing that people could
Service.
do. So they could be at home and print to the library sort of thing, but it wasn't cost effective.
it wasn't cost effective, and the staff figured out a workaround. That's great. So people are still able to come into the library and print from a phone, wirelessly, but I don't know. It wasn't getting used a lot. And so we have a payment. You had asked Deb about scheduling a full staff meeting or
Yes.
staff meeting. So a couple of things that I did talk to the department heads today about this. We're able to do the 27th, but
Uh-huh.
8 a.m.
Perfect.
Oh, good. Okay. We can open at 9, but I'm going to cover CERC, so that staff who might be CERC staff, if they still want to take advantage of communicating with you, it's not a super heavy time, but.
And the point of the meeting is primarily to go over the new staff salary schedule and answer any questions and explain our rationale and what's going on with it, so that they know about it before. I mean, they have heard about it, but so that they can hear about it from us.
Right.
So will you be able to make 8 a.m. on that day? Okay, great.
Okay, so we can, what we're suggesting is to have a full staff meeting presentation and then take questions.
Sure.
Like after.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because some people may not have questions, some people may.
Sure.
I mean, so just to have maybe
Yep.
both aspects of a meeting, rather than, you know, you had suggested maybe one-on-one appointments.
Well, I wasn't even. I just thought we could be there,
Yeah.
and then if people wanted to pop in, you know, if that was more
Well-
comfortable for people, which is essentially what you're saying, the same thing, that we would do a big presentation, and then
Yeah.
if people had questions, or if people we're here if you want to pop back in
Yeah,
with something.
I think one of the benefits that I think all the department heads agreed on was, you know, everyone is hearing the same information from you
Okay.
at the same time.
Do you think it would be best to have the salary schedule up on the board, or like
Sure,
have
if
it?
you want
Okay.
to do the clump room,
Yeah.
the big screen.
And we could put it up on the big
Bigger?
screen and just okay.
Do you want, and I don't mind doing it, like a presentation, like a PowerPoint presentation?
If you're going to offer, yeah.
Okay,
Why
I'll
not?
do it. It's easy.
Let's go for it.
Well, and we also have the narrative that we wrote up to go with it, so
Exactly.
you can
Yeah.
pull some stuff from them and just put it on
Sure.
slides from that. So.
So we'll put you in the clump room.
Okay, Janet, you have fun with that. Janet's going to have a great time doing that. So she was like, I'll even do a spreadsheet if you want. So, like, okay. So, and Donna, just for, we can only have 2 of us at the meeting, because once we go into 3, it becomes an actual meeting of the trustees, and then we would need to post it and do all that sort of thing.
We'd have
So,
to post it as a non-meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
And you would have to not talk about business.
Yep.
And make votes.
Yep.
You just have to be a regular person.
Yep.
Okay, so another thing, and I'm just gonna pass this one to, well, I don't know, I always do this wrong. Alyssa knows this. I'm always like, which way do I pass? Okay, so I'm gonna pass this out. Just so you have it in front of you. I like to read and listen. I'm not an auditory learner myself. So Deb had emailed me saying that she had some concerns about the children's room closing at 6:30. And so I just wanted to share with you some of the rationale that the department heads went over. We were under a time crunch with this. So we had to come up with several scenarios.
also just, yes, because one of the things I mentioned to her, and it says in there, I'm sorry, in the first sentence, was that any change in service, I thought that the trustees should be voting on that, because it's a change in service. That's kind of what.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I have the authority to close the building, you know, for lots of reasons. So it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other. I wanted you guys to understand what we were discussing, and the different scenarios that we ran in terms of staying open until 7:30, and I can't even say there's pros to that, to be honest. But, you know, I usually like to weigh pros and cons, but really there were more cons with staying open versus closing at 6:30. It's temporary. This is because staff is on a leave right now, and they received short notice about it. So even though they were able to present us with different scenarios of different kinds of schedules, when we heard from them, then we had to pivot very quickly and put things in place and try and notify the public as quickly as possible. And so this is kind of this is the situation we're in. It's much smoother. We were able to. We only have, let's say we only have 66 or 69 hours of staffing downstairs right now, because we have 40 hours is on leave and 20 hours is open and not filled yet. And the staff are trying to maintain the level of service that that we've been offering. They did cut one story time, but really that's it. So this is hopefully the option that we hope will keep people safe. I was very concerned, I think we were all concerned about liability, having a room open at night for an hour without staff. And if something happens, nobody knows about it. So that's kind of where, I don't know if you have anything you want to say yet. But I received, I just had the department heads, reiterate to me our talking points that we had discussed. We haven't heard anecdotally from patrons that this has been a negative thing.
I know the situation that I witnessed was I was standing next to someone, their child went downstairs, came back up and said, they're closed. And I said to her, I think you could ask at the desk and they'd get you something. And they just said, nope, we'll come back sometime. And they left. And there were people on the floor. So I just didn't know if the staff at the circ desk was, when you saw someone come up from upstairs, if there was any kind of, protocol for reaching out to them. Because, a little boy running downstairs, that's what he was looking for. So I just felt bad seeing people leave without getting what they came there
he
for.
He should be unsupervised. His parents should be down there with him. I'll just say that first off. But, we have that particular night. I think I said to you or wrote to you that Reggie was in a program. He had split his shift to come back for a program. We have a new staff person who's being trained, so cannot be alone, legally cannot be alone with anybody, any patron, because we work with at-risk populations, elderly and children, and you guys know this, I'm kind of telling you what you know already. So she can't be supervising a room. Our page, who would be closing the room, finishes their shift at 7 and is also a minor, technically. We were not comfortable with that. There were we weren't comfortable with a lot of it, leaving the room open. So it's kind of not an ideal situation. We don't want to take services away from anybody. That is a very sad thing. And I think we're just stuck between a rock and a hard place, I think. So.
Is there anything that we could do to support? I mean, it feels awful for you to, have to cut back. For you to cut back on services in your building
It's
that you
time.
want.
It's time in the building. So people can still ask staff to go
Exactly,
down
right.
and get the item.
Yeah.
We just don't want to have people, families, children.
But where the library closed earlier to 7:30 a little while ago, and now the children's room is closing at 6:30. No, I just.
But
it's
you
for
weren't
good
here,
reasons.
but
It's for good
we looked at the
reasons.
numbers,
Yeah.
and patrons weren't in the building
Yep.
past 7:30.
Yep.
I think there were 3, 5. It was very minimal. People use the library in the daytime, in the
Well,
morning
it's
when we
tough
have
to have.
programs.
I know you have meeting rooms that are really awesome for folks to.
Sure, and
to have
people have been
meetings.
able to start their meetings at 6 and get out by
Good.
7:15 or 7:30.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm usually the one who's late, to be honest, with my book group, because we like to chat. But
Well, if there's anything creative at all that you think of as far as staffing,
I can't have you volunteer
list.
to cover the room because
No, but I
you're
mean,
not allowed to do work that we have a paid staff doing.
So we're anticipating that this will be changing though in the first week of March. So that
We're hoping March 10th.
okay.
We can, March 7, I guess, is the Friday, which wouldn't be affected anyway because it's 5 o'clock. So, yeah, we're really hoping that. I
Okay.
have to have documentation,
Okay.
so they can come back.
Okay.
We're all looking forward to
Okay.
being more staffed.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. What else?
I don't know. Did you want to vote on this change?
Well, you said that you could do it. So I thought that we would be the ones, even like the passport thing too. I thought that we would be the ones as the trustees who determine what services, because when there's a new service introduced, we usually vote to implement it. So it would seem to me when a service was being changed or, not offered anymore, that we would be the ones as the trustees that would vote on it,
I don't know. I mean, if we stop story time, are you going to vote on us stopping story time? I mean, we're suspending. I mean, no.
Yeah,
don't see it as a
I mean, I
vote.
see your point. I don't know.
I do with respect to passports.
Mhm.
Passports we should have been informed about because that's a money resource. That even, I mean, we're bringing that actually up tonight. And then, but it's more, I guess I see it as a courtesy.
Well, she did tell us about this in January, but I don't know what to say. I'm not really sure, honestly. It was my impression that as trustees we voted on services, but I see your point about the story time. Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else have any?
I don't know. I see your position more as governance. So, and I'm very locked into the policy piece. So
Mhm.
that could just be where you know, large expenditures. I've had a lot of different trustees, and they all interpret it different.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it certainly wasn't something I was keeping from you.
Yeah, I guess we would decide. I guess maybe I shouldn't even say services, that we decided to close the library an hour earlier. So we're essentially closing the children's room an hour earlier. So that's a little bit different than a story time and a change in like a program that you do versus like closing down a part of the library and not making it accessible to people.
I don't really see it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we can just leave it as it is. I just think that anytime something is closed and people can't have access to it, that, like I said, we voted to close the library at 7:30 or 7.
I know, but if there's an emergency,
Mm-hmm.
there's a flood, there's a snow event. I mean, maybe if this is how I'm interpreting the staffing, I saw it more as a staffing issue and not.
Patron services.
No, because I kept thinking of the safety issue, and that was really hammered home to me by my department heads, really bringing up, what about this event? What about this event? What about this event?
Mhm.
Because I want to stay open.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, no, that's liability. Okay, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought a lot about coverage. I mean, we talked about, we're stretching the staff a lot already. So my head is in a very different place,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say. But yeah, I mean, if we close for a flood, I do not ask you to vote on that. We shut down and I shut it down.
No, but I think coming to the trustees and saying, we're not paying staff enough. I can't get staff. There's nobody
We've
that's
already
applying.
done that. You-
Good. Well, I mean,
I'm glad you're saying that.
It's
but-
the I think it's the trustees that get those questions from. You probably do too, but like from the town meeting, the budget and the, whatever service hours and services and stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was the time turnaround where we found out the day before.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Yeah.
gonna find out. You're gonna find out at the next meeting. So there you are finding out. I mean,
Yeah, I guess this is a different kind of situation. I would just think that, whenever there's like I said, we voted to close the library at 7:30. And so that was a change in hours of services. So I think
sure,
that's the
and
difference.
I gave you a long time to consider it.
Right, I understand.
I mean, this is a little.
Yeah,
it's
I know. It's a different situation. I
Yeah.
understand. And it looks like it's going to be resolved before our next meeting, even so.
I really hope so.
Hmm. I guess I would say if it becomes a longer term issue, though, then it really needs to be something that I mean, I know you're going to look at it, but I don't think it can go on for that long. It's just not fair to people who work and bring their kids there. And you could say there's only a few people, but I don't know. It's still those people. That's their time there, so.
I don't want this person out.
Oh, I understand. I know.
Again, maybe my head is in a really different place than yours
Hmm.
because I am thinking of the staff. If you want to vote on it, you're welcome to vote on it. That is the pleasure of the board. So, but I would not recommend that we open the room until
Mhm.
7:30 and leave it. We will not be able to staff it.
Hmm.
We've ran so many different scenarios, and Jen and I are already staffing the room twice a week, one each of us, for an afternoon to cover program.
Hmm. Right, I hear your point that it happened really quickly. I just think that if things are going to be happening, if something were to come up, let's say like this in the future, and something that we could think about, that I think the board should be able to, I don't know, at least vote on it, even if it's just to support it, because then it's not just you that made that decision, that the board also voted on it, right? So there's 2 points to that. So we should just move on, because I think we're just talking in circles at this point, and it's getting late, and I know there's other things to do, and this is going to resolve itself in a couple of weeks. So
Well, I apologize for being blindsiding you, although there was no way around it.
Mhm. Okay.
I don't have any more in my director's report.
Okay. All right. So any questions for Yvette before we move on to the treasurer's report? Okay, Janet, treasurer's report.
Okay. I am looking at the balance sheet, and the balance sheet for fines for the month of January, we started with $8,752.30. We ended the month with $8,273.89. With special, we started the month with $56,069.72, and then we ended the month with $54,508.83. Any questions? Any questions on the profit and loss for the fines or special? If you actually did look at either of them, you'll see the deposits from the primary savings into each of their respective accounts that are the square transactions. Okay, what else do I have to say? So I did move January's square transactions for fines is $183.50. So $183.50. I'd like to make a motion to move $183.50 from primary savings to fines.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 500.
And then for special, it's $5.74. So I'd like to make a motion to move $5.74 from primary savings to special.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 500. Thank you, Janet.
Excellent. I sent documents out that are the investment policy and trustee guidelines. Deb and I are going to meet to review them, and we'll bring them back on March's meeting. If in the process you have questions, bring them to us. We'll review it. I wanted you guys to have like the most up-to-date, and then we'll review, bring the update, and hopefully vote on March. I sent a note to Yvette about the Friends and tote bags and book sale. Currently, people can buy the tote bags and the book sale, and they can use the square transactions at Circ. We need to reimburse Friends for that, and I don't remember how much it was off the top of my head, but
30 for tote bags and 16 for books.
thank you. We owe them money. I sent a note to the Friends treasurer, Victoria, just to reconcile the account, because at the moment we have some disconnect with our reimbursement line. I reached out to Paul Calabria today, actually, asking about line 38. So if we could see, like, given the general ledger that you send us, can I see it? And he said no, not yet. It hasn't been done yet, but it's on his to-do list. I said, okay. So, because I wanted to just make sure, I just wanted to see, because he said we would be able to see it. And I wanted to know what I would be looking at, and it's not done yet. So he said, thank you for your patience. What else did I have to ask? That's it. Actually, just as a nitnoid, back in our November's meeting, I made a motion to move some money out of the maintenance lines to be charged out of the building lines. Those are also, he acknowledged, are also on his to-do list because he recognizes that there are some POs that need to be reallocated and closed. So, I'm gonna bring up passports now.
Okay.
So this year I think this is the first time I've experienced this since I've been on the board. We have anticipated money, which is our like trust fund money and the Friends money that they give us. And if yearly we did a specific grant, that's anticipated money. We know that money is coming in. Our unanticipated money in the past has been fines. We have income generating equipment money that comes in like for the copier. And we've had passport money. At the moment, we've only had, because of staffing issues, we've had to put a pause on passports, totally understandable. But can only spend what we've allocated in our budget, and we allocated $17,200. We can't go over that. And in the past, because we had passport money coming in, that was unanticipated money, we could just spend, and whatever came in as passport money, we could spend out. We're allowed to do that by law. We don't have that luxury at the moment. So we need to be just a little bit more cognizant of how much we spend out of passports until passports comes back online. I sent out that document, and at the moment we can spend right around $1,900 out of passports for the rest of the year until more passport money comes in or donations comes in.
So do you have any idea, like, do you have a hopeful date for when passports will come back
I'm
online?
doing my passports.
Okay.
I'm trying to not pressure the other passport agents to schedule them if it's interfering with their other workload.
Sure.
For example, children's room, we have two agents.
Mhm.
One is out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One is doing the other person's work.
Yep.
They're not doing the
Yeah, I mean, we stopped doing passports when we were down about 100 hours, and we've just now regained 40 hours that we're training. So basically, since we paused it, the situation in terms of hours hasn't changed. I think for myself, when we have our team physician fully trained, they'll be taking on some desk time, which can get myself and my assistant off of some of this desk covering time, which frees up a little extra time to have an hour to do passports here and there. I mean, in the meantime, it's just been sort of desperately keeping up with everything. And then, of course, currently doing training takes a lot of time. It's a lot. Well, to train a person for 40 hours when you're there for 40 hours is 40 hours of training. So hopefully, once we have our person who's out back and we have our new full-time person trained, or at least sufficient enough to, well, trained and background checked and able to close the building, because it's a building closing position, that's where the hours will come from. That's when we can look at our schedules. We'll have a little bit of a breather and be able to look at our schedules and start to implement those again. At least for me upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had only just started to tell them this when I was around me. So we'll go back and remind people
Mhm.
as kindly and firmly as possible to evaluate, because there are some people,
I would also highlight that some things could go to appropriations. We know we're going to have extra. So,
Yeah, I think
Just purely out of-
appropriations first, right? Isn't that the idea, to spend that down? Because we don't want to be always carrying money over. much as we are. So
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to spend all buckets.
well, I would say spend that one first. Spend that one first and spend from our 17. And then passports is like the last thing, the last bucket. Because because that one we can keep, and then next year could become anticipated funds, right? That's money but we can't spend over it because then we run into that. We will actually be overspent, which is the one that which we've been told we were overspent and we were not overspent, and we do not want to actually become overspent because that would be like
That would be
not good.
ironic.
Yeah. So, Alyssa, before you came in, there was the discussion of the controllers. And I think Yvette was going to look and getting that from something in appropriations. So, okay. So we're not saying no, we're just saying take it from there. But there's money somewhere. So, okay. Any questions for Janet about passports, the reports, or anything?
I have one more comment.
Sure.
So I want you to think about, and I'm glad you're here, looking at a new copier. It's 8 years old. It just literally just came up. February 21 of 17 is when we got that one. Look at it. We have $11,000 in copier money. So look at it, think about it. Specifically from copier money, that's allocated as copier money. So talk amongst yourselves.
Do we own our copier or do we
We
lease
do.
it? We own it.
We own it, and the net income from it is right around 11,000. Not that you have to spend it all, but it has to come out of that pot of money. Like, it can't come out of appropriations, or what we get from it has to go back to the town.
Gotcha.
So
The net income is 11,000 annually, or?
no.
8
This has been
years?
the last 8 years.
Thank you.
So, so think about
Okay.
it. Throwing it out there. Well, I know like 2 years ago when Max was here, we talked about it, and I think it was like 60 years old, and I looked and I was like, yeah, no. But again, I just happened to see the date, and I'm like, wow, that's like 8 years old, and then I looked at how much was the net, and I'm like, you know what, it's about time. And with technology improvements, I mean, insanely improving since 8 years ago, I'm sure you can find something.
It's been functioning fine.
Sure,
For us
but
so far.
that's, I mean, it
But,
doesn't
yeah.
have to be done tomorrow. I
Right.
mean, you can look, you could take a year, take 6 months, take 3 months, whatever. But
Yeah, it's probably reaching the point where the maintenance on it will start to get expensive because it's old.
yep, so I throw that out there as, like I said, because I saw it, and I think I'm done.
Okay, great. Thank you, Janet. Acceptance of minutes. We have our minutes from the January 21st meeting. Does anyone have any corrections or comments for Molly?
I do.
Okay.
Under bookkeeper, you had JK provide update. Professional spend is under budget. What for the current? What does that mean? Professional spend is under budget.
So
Professional line?
yeah,
The
the-
professional salary lines?
I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just what it
Yeah.
says.
Yeah. That's what was stated.
Professional spend is under budget.
I think it probably means professional salary lines.
Okay.
So can you change
Do you
that
want
to
a
salary
different
lines?
word,
Is that
salary
yes.
lines
lines? Mhm.
from fiscal year budget, current fiscal year budget?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what I'm like. What am I talking about there? Got it.
Okay. Any other corrections or changes? Okay, then I'll make a motion that we accept the January 21st, 2025 minutes with those changes.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 500. Great, thank you. Okay, committee updates. There's no building exploratory committee, so Friends of the Merrimack Library.
Our last meeting was January 13th. They did not have any staff requests for funding. And they were just talking about the setup for the book sale.
Thank you. It was a great book sale. The development fund met. The big changes there are that there's a new treasurer. Lynn Christensen is their new treasurer now. So that was really the big news there. That was what that meeting was about. Nothing else. Town Center, we don't have a rep currently going to that. So we're on to the Library Board of Trustees Committee updates. Personnel Committee, Molly.
So there's 3 topics. I don't know if we want to do them all, considering time, but I think I can probably go over them somewhat quickly. If it turns into bigger discussion, maybe we, make a decision from that point. But so Ruth Marie, myself, and Yvette had met at the end of January for the Personnel Committee, and we have some proposed questions for the 3 of us to take to the town HR person named Sharon. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to share with you what those questions are. So what we're hoping to be able to do is, and I'm going to read a little bit off of Ruth Marie's summary from our meeting, was to achieve a clear document understanding of what Sharon's role and to allow us to further define the Personnel Committee role for the Board of Trustees and how that relates with raising employee relations matters. So the questions that we outlined, there's 5 questions. Sharon's role as the director for the town for HR. When does she specifically have a role in helping the library? Clarify the topics when she would advise the library director, what happens if the library director needs to raise a matter, and then also the benefits and retirement topics involvement, which was something that we were talking about, and really I think it's a matter of trying to deepen an understanding and to potentially create some parameters or charter even for what the Personnel Committee of the Library Board of Trustees is a little bit more defined as, and that would be just the questions that have come to mind. Anything else that I haven't covered, but just wanted to check with the board first, obviously, to be sure that everybody's in agreement or support of bringing those questions forward, and obviously get those answers back to the entire team as well.
I'm just going to, because I know whenever I reach out to the town finance department, the board votes on it. So I just think we should vote so that it shows that you have the backing of the board in doing this. So if there's ever any question about it. So I'm going to make a motion that our library personnel committee meet with Sharon, the director of town HR, to go over the questions as noted.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for Molly about that? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. 5-0-0. Just that way you have
Thank
the support of the board going behind you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I will add to the action items about getting that scheduled in the coming month-ish. The second topic is about the library director job description, which is in your packets. So Ruth Marie, myself, and Yvette met to create a concise overview of the library director job description. So really looking for any feedback. We don't necessarily need to go over it unless there's some initial feedback. We're happy to hear that today, or we can put that on next month's to vote on approval, or if people are comfortable with it, we can do that now.
Did people have anything that they wanted to discuss now, or could we ask people to get feedback to you?
That's
Is there anything
fine.
people want to ask about the director's job description now? No?
Do you want
No?
more time to review it? I mean, or do people felt like they had time to take a look or want to continue to take a look.
I looked up other library job descriptions, and there is a missing financial piece to me. I mean, all it says is management.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yep.
I mean, it talks about staff, it talks about collection management, it talks about the building, a little much, not much, but I mean a little bit more in depth, and there's one line, one word with respect to finances, and I would like to see a little more than that.
Do you want to send Molly your suggested changes to that for Molly and Ruth Marie to look at, and can, and then if you wouldn't mind sending out the
Revision.
and then we can take a look at that.
Happy to do that.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so why don't we say as an action item that you'll get the revisions to us, and then we will review it and get back to you before the next meeting with the intention of working towards approving this. So.
Yep. That sounds great. Then the last piece of the personnel committee work is this is the time of year we go through Yvette's evaluation. So Ruth Marie and I drafted a evaluation form that I can send out to the board for feedback, and I have a timeline proposal because we need to probably look at delivering the evaluation. I'm hoping potentially the week of 3/24, which is the week after our next board meeting. So let me walk back a little bit those dates as I'm kind of looking at the calendar. So if the board is able to look at the evaluation form and provide feedback in the next 2 weeks, that would be March 8th. That way we can compile the information and potentially have a non-public after the March 18th board meeting to hopefully get on the same page about the feedback as it has come to us, and also prepare then a document for delivery that week after. So
When you're talking, just a quick question, when
Yeah.
you're talking about feedback on the form,
Nope.
you want
If
feedback
it's-
on the director,
Yes,
not
correct.
on the form. Okay,
On the
I just
form.
wanted, because you said you were
I know, I was confused too.
and I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure
no.
I'm not if I'm
Yeah.
reviewing the form,
I
or
just don't think we have time to review
That's
the
fine.
form
I just wanted to know what I'm
together,
reviewing,
but
because
we
if
can
I send
obviously
you,
take that feedback too. Yes.
So is this a new form?
It's a different form.
So it's a different form that you would be sending us to have completed with our feedback before we voted on it to approve it.
Do we need to vote on the evaluation form?
Yes. Because it's changed.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So
I'm just thinking timeline here.
yeah. Okay. So I didn't know that. So if we need to vote on that, either we can do that in March, but that's pretty
Can I make a suggestion?
difficult.
Can you send people the form to look at it?
Yes.
And then maybe we could have a quick meeting in the next week or so,
Mm.
and you only need 3 people.
Yeah.
So people could send their feedback to you, and then if we could get a quorum together to vote on.
Mhm.
I was just thinking of when you guys are doing the staff meeting next Thursday, and then we have the building committee at 10, or the walkthrough at 10. So maybe if we could,
We would have a quorum at that
we
point if
could
the 3 of us
in-
went to
right.
meet.
Yeah,
But
sure.
we would be voting on the form that had,
Yeah.
people had looked at and had
Yeah.
incorporated revisions
Okay.
into it. So,
so yeah.
so if you send it to people, and that way anything people want to see changed in it,
Can we also get a copy of this form? I mean, I'm sorry, but it seems a little strange that you're gonna evaluate me on a form that doesn't exist yet.
So let
I'm
me.
wondering about the expectations.
Yep. Let me say, so the form primarily consists of the annual goals, which you have, and the whole team has. And then it also has very broad categories related to leadership and direction of the library. I think the form that was previous was like 3 pages and very detailed. So this is like big picture categories and allows a very basic feedback for comments and a essential ranking of superior, adequate, needs development type. But I'll send it out and people can provide their feedback. It's basic and it's relatively brief, but it also allows for people to provide the feedback that we feel like needs to happen.
Okay, so Yvette needs to see a copy of that too.
Yeah.
It's basically the same categories and stuff that we were using before, but it's just kind of been edited to add more feedback, more or less.
It's just a lot less words.
Okay.
It's a lot less words.
Okay.
I think it's the same categories with in a smaller package.
Okay. Yeah, so if you'd send it to all of us and to Yvette
Yeah.
also, that would be great. So
Yeah. And then that's February 27th.
27th.
Yep.
Okay.
And of course, anybody else who's available at 9, 10 o'clock on the 27th is welcome to join us.
So going back to that, so with the assumption that it's going to get passed on the 27th, were you still looking at having a non-public after our meeting on the 18th?
Well, I think that would be
We were going to compile and meet in non-public.
compile ahead of the 18th.
Yeah,
The 18th,
okay.
Yep. In theory, if it works out that way, that would be helpful.
Could you send us the timeline too, just
Yes,
as part of this,
absolutely.
so we have one
Yeah.
spot to get it all the information? So-
Yeah, my hope was that Ruth Marie would be able to weigh in on the most recent email chain, but I think that didn't happen. So just didn't line up with our meeting tonight.
No worries.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I know you guys have been working very hard on
Yeah.
this. Okay,
I want to make
Go
one
ahead.
comment.
Yep.
Ideally, this should be done by the end of March.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what I have mapped out is that week of 3/24 as an idea for
Mhm.
coming together for delivery.
Okay, great, thank you. Finance Committee, well, we're going to meet. We're going to meet with the staff to go over the staff salary schedule. We're going to meet to look at the investment policy. But that's what's going on in Building Committee.
We haven't had a meeting because we're bi-monthly. Our next meeting is March 13th.
Okay.
And we will be at the walkthrough
Mm-hmm.
next week.
Great. Okay, review February's action items. I'm going to need some help with this one. So we have Janet and I will be meeting with the staff on the February 27th at 8 a.m. There is the chiller walkthrough that Erin and Janet will be attending. Molly is going to send us all the timeline and the form for us to review. Janet has some money she's going to be moving around.
Yep.
Yep. I will be finishing up compiling my list of chair duties to send out. What else? What am I missing?
Hold on, let me type that and I will go back to my. Yvette is looking at the elevator invoice, the 10,000 versus 11,000 amount, and the 3-cent $30 general ledger from December. Yvette's sending contact info to Janet for Eric Stern and the board is reviewing Janet's documents and sending feedback prior to March meeting.
We're also reviewing the director's job description and providing feedback on that as well. And you and Molly and Ruth Marie are going to schedule a meeting with the HR director for the town.
I am also making a salary presentation.
Oh, and Jen is making a salary PowerPoint presentation. Yes. Okay. She definitely doesn't want you to forget that. PowerPoint, put that right in there. So, okay.
Like put .pt.
Yes, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to review the upcoming events. We'll have our full staff meeting on the 27th at 8 a.m. at the library. The filing for elected offices is February 19th through February 28th by 5 p.m. at Town Hall. Friends of the Library will meet March 3rd at 6 p.m. in the director's office. The annual meeting 1 deliberative session will be held on March 12th at 7 p.m. at the J. Muse All-Purpose Room. The next trustee meeting will be March 18th, 7 p.m. here in the Merrimack Memorial Room. Annual meeting 2, voting day, will be held on April 8th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., various locations around town. And the Merrimack Public Library Development Fund Committee will be meeting on April 28th at 5 p.m. in the Lowell Room. Anything else? Okay, then I will make a motion that we adjourn at 9:40.
Second.
All those in favor?